Woodland Magick by R. Gregory. I was just finishing breaking my fast when Flavius came to me. "You have a visitor," he said, and after the mutinous events of the night I worried. "Who is it?" I asked. "Caesar's witch," he replied, and I stopped chewing mid-mouthful. "Show her to my quarters," I said as I sipped my wine without water. Although I was Castra Vetera's medicus legionis, top doc in the hierarchy of command, I didn't know much about magic, and the gods seemed to have turned deaf ears to my prayers and pleadings. But I genuinely feared witches who worked real magic. "Tell her I'll be with her shortly," I added. When I entered my quarters, I was surprised to find her relishing one of my Greek medical treatises. Sitting at my desk, she smiled as she looked up at me, her young face sliced by an old scar, her green eyes sparkling below copper-red hair. "I always wondered how that worked," she said. "I've only seen the insides of the dead in the arena, on the battlefield, and as gladiator dissections in the spoliarium," she said, smiling, and I realized we both shared spoliarium memories, from different points of view, no doubt. "You were a gladiatrix?" I asked. "I was," she said, and sighed as if she missed the life she led as one. "Germanicus Caesar says you trained as a surgeon at the gladiator school, the Magnus Ludus in Pergamum." "So I did," I said. "How can I help you, Deathbringer?" "It's not how you can help me, but how I can help you," she said, smiling, and I wondered where this was going. "I'll get to the point," she added, as if she read my thoughts. "The man you love," she started. "Which man?" I asked. "Your Marcus, Caesar's whipping boy," she added, and I frowned and wondered who else knew that. "What of him?" I skirted. "I have something for him and you," she whispered, and I was intrigued as she dug into her sling bag. She fished around for some time before she pulled out a handful of small dried mushrooms wrapped in cloth. "Your Marcus," she began. "He has a big dream eater sucking on his neck. I've seen it." She added matter-of-factly as if everyone else who could see dream-eating demons too. "A dream eater?" I asked, as I had never heard of such a creature. "They are born of curses, and there is nothing I can do to rid him of it, but I tell you it's there and will plague him often, and will weaken him with nightmares," she said. "It can only be removed by the person who cursed him." "And?" I ventured. "And he is surrounded by the ghosts of the untimely dead, his men, the ones he tried to save and couldn't. They crowd his ever-waking moments and cling to him like a shroud. His nightmares must be truly terrifying. I am sure he sees them when he sleeps. He calls their names in his mind even while waking, and they cannot pass to the afterlife. Such is his hold on their lives and their sudden deaths that their spirits are tied to him, not to where their bones lie yet unburied," she said authoritatively, as if her metaphysical knowledge was omnipresent and could not be challenged. "Why tell me this?" I asked, wondering where we were going. "If he eats these mushrooms, he will see while waking the demon that plagues him and the ghosts of the untimely dead. If he calls them and confronts them, some may leave him for the afterlife, and he will know some peace. He stands at a crossroads in his life, and one road is longer than the other," she said, her green eyes searching my brown ones, and suddenly I felt chilled. "I give you enough for 2 men," she said appraisingly, "as he will need your guidance," she added slowly, as she handed me the mushrooms, and I looked at them most carefully. They were dried, buff-colored, small and shriveled, with pointy caps and dark blue bruises where they had been squeezed while being picked. "Why is it you offer us your woodland magic and otherworldly counsel? Is there something Marcus and I have that would best serve you?" I asked transactionally. "I have everything I need, Medicus Galenus, but I am deeply troubled. I have witnessed Germanicus Caesar brutally mistreating Marcus, and I only wish to offer what I can to alleviate his suffering. Marcus is a strong young man with a good heart, and although his men died while under his command, their ghosts whisper that he is not responsible for their deaths, but I don't think he hears them," she added. "Marcus has never mentioned their ghosts, but you are right, he does not sleep well. Do you stay the winter in our Castra, our camp?" I asked her. "No, tomorrow I go with Caesar, and I will translate for him and his officers at the hostage exchange with the Tencteri nobles and their tribal chieftain," she said. A few nights later, when Marcus returned from his engineering work, road building across the great river, we had coitus, tenderly at first, and then most earnestly until we were spent. Marcus was not my concubinus, as were many of the men who lived with their valiant legionary officers, but a young disgraced siege-works engineer who had lost his vexillation almost all of the men under his command during an unprovoked attack outside Emesa. After he recovered from his wounds, he was court-martialed upon the tribunal, but Imperator Augustus knew his family and intervened, and Marcus did not lose his head for his derelictions. His crime had been to let his men road build without their armor in the searing Syrian sun that summer. Instead of losing his head, he was stripped of rank, and the Palatium banished him from the regions of Syria and Judea. Then they sent him first to Tiberias and Illyria, and then to the wilds of Germania to work road building and erecting siege works for Germanicus Caesar. "I have missed us, Galenus," Marcus said as he kissed me on the cheek, his steel blue eyes searching mine. And then he rose from our bed to pass his water. I was going to get up and piss too, but I was so tired from treating our many mutinous wounded that I rolled onto my side and closed my eyes, just for a moment, and was gone. I don't know how long I slept, but screaming jolted me awake. "What?" I railed. But Marcus was screaming and flailing wildly in his sleep, and I tried to grab his hands, but not knowing me, he fought me as if I were a barbarian. He punched me so hard I fell from our bed. Rubbing my jaw and chin and wiping blood from my lips, I shook him, and wild-eyed he didn't know for a few moments where he was or who he was with. "Marcus, it's all right. There's no danger," I said emphatically, as he bolted upright, and like a madman he looked around in terror. And then he saw me shaking, my old knees on the cold stone floor. "What happened, Galenus? Did you roll out of bed?" he asked, concerned. "No, you ass," I grouched. "Your screaming nightmares woke me, and when I tried to reassure you as you flailed about, you hit me hard," I grumbled as I got up and poured some cold water into my washing bowl, wet a cloth, and held it to my face. "Do you see them?" I asked directly. "See who?" he asked as I rejoined him in our bed. "Your men, the ones you lost outside Rapane. They're ghosts of the untimely dead. Do you see them?" I asked, and he looked startled. "I do see them sometimes," he whispered. "Only in your dreams or otherwise?" I asked. "They haunt my dreams, my nightmares," he murmured. "How did you know?" "Caesar's witch said you could see them." "Caesar's witch, Deathbringer, said I was cursed, and that I had some dream demon sucking on my soul," he added as he got out of bed. "Is there a medical term for that?" he asked. "Madness would be my best guess," I said, nursing my lips and cheek. A shortage of senior officers after our mutiny left me briefly in command as Caesar took many with him to Ubiorum to quell a rising mutiny there. A month passed before Marcus and I decided that, as our Castra was less mutinous, and as scouting parties had seen no imminent barbarian dangers, that we would try the witch's remedy for nightmares. It was hours after we had returned from the officers' baths and Marcus and I were readying for bed that I pulled the dried mushrooms from my bedside drawer and showed them to him. "How many do we take?" he asked, and I shrugged my shoulders. I counted there were 13, and so I gave him 6, and I took as many. "Do you take them for your nightmares and the ghosts that you must also see as medicus legionis?" he asked me, his eyes curious. "No, I said I take them for you, as the witch said it would be best if I was with you, as your guide. But mark me, I have no idea where we are going with this Woodland Magick, or why she thought in my inexperience with this pharmacon that I could lead you," I said as I ate mine. Musty they tasted, and very dry, and I washed them down with unwatered wine. Marcus grimly chewed and swallowed his. "Gods, I hope the cure is better than the taste," he whispered. We slipped into bed and waited, and waited, and waited. Finally, after about an hour, disappointed, I decided to get up and pass my water, but as I was doing so, I felt the strangest sensations. My pissing seemed to take forever, as if time had slowed, and I marveled at my sparkling, shimmering golden shower, as if I was seeing my water for the very first time. I stared at it in slack-jawed wonder. When I finally finished and had a prolonged shake, I looked around and, by the gods, did I see colors! Magnificent, intricate, changing colored patterns of light moved and shimmered across every wall, and I wondered that the witch's woodland magic could so captivate my senses. Marcus was sitting upright in bed and had the blanket drawn up to his chin like a child who fears the thunder. His eyes were black saucers as he stared at the foot of our bed. "Do you see something?" I asked him, as he held his breath and fearfully nodded. "You will have to tell me what you see, as I only see brilliant, beautiful colors in changing patterns," I said, as Marcus gripped the blanket like a shield. His voice was thick. "My men, the ones I lost near Rapani, are here," he cried. "Can't you see them?" he shrilled, anxiety ripping through his voice. "I am cursed!" he suddenly screamed as he looked at his shoulder and swatted it as if he saw something sitting on it. "Don't look at it," I whispered. "Close your eyes and tell me what you see," I asked him, and he shut his eyes tight as if he feared lightning. But a few moments later he released his breath and breathed more gently, rhythmically, and his fears eased. "Oh, by the gods above, the colors are so amazing. I've never seen anything quite so beautiful," he whispered. And then he opened his eyes and stared at me. "But they are still here, and they haven't left me," he shrieked. "Caesar's witch said they are the ghosts of the untimely dead, and because of your strong bonds with them in life, as ghosts, they attach themselves to you rather than to their unburied bones," I counseled. "She said you must call them one by one and speak to them and listen," I advised as I slid into bed and gently wrapped my arms around him. He closed his eyes and sighed, resting his head on my shoulder. "They will go away if I'm not looking at them," he said. "So when you are speaking to each one, if it gets to be too much, close your eyes and don't see them. It will help you with their grievances if they have them," I offered. And to my amazement, Marcus called them one by name and asked them what they wished of him and why they yet clung to him as they were dead. And he asked them why they plagued his nightmares. He told me they said that as their bones lay yet unburied, they could only be seen by someone who cared for them in life and who could yet aid them in their passage to the afterlife. They pleaded with him to free them, to find their bones and have them buried, so they and he could know some peace. Tears rained from his eyes as he wept for them and apologized that he alone had led them to their deaths. He begged their forgiveness, but they absolved him of that guilt, as they said he was not responsible for their dying. That lay at the hands of the rebels who attacked them. They pleaded for his aid, and Marcus wept and could not be comforted. It seemed to take him hours before he calmed, but with this woodland magic I realized time was altered, and I could not tell how long we wrestled with his demons. Finally he was spent and weary, and when he got up to pass his water I followed him. When he finished, I laid my hand on his shoulder, and he turned and looked at me with wildly dilated steel-blue eyes below that shock of ebony hair, and I smiled as he wrapped his arms around me and hugged me hard. "I know what it is I must do now," he said at last, as I tenderly nuzzled his scratchy cheek. I was breathing hard as brilliant colors danced across the walls, dissolving into flowers and bees, or so I thought, as Marcus wedged me tight against the wall, and then he kissed me most passionately. Oh, gods above, the sensations we shared that night were beyond belief. My need for him, his needs for me. We stroked each other as if we were one, and then when we came ever closer to our mutual climax, we both saw exquisite rainbow colors, as if we were being drenched in a misty spring rain shower, and we marveled at the sensations of it. I noticed when moving my arms or legs there were traces of the image that followed my movements, as if I had 8 or 9 arms and just as many legs. It was surreal to see such visions. When we were blissfully spent, I breathlessly asked him to walk with me through the camp before it wakened. Outside the air was cool and crisp, and only a few clouds scudded across the autumn sky, while vermilion fingers clawed the horizon. We walked the vast camp, all our senses heightened. The smells of wood smoke, horses, sweaty arms, too many men crowded together, and the taste of the changing seasons was a marvel to us both, as if we saw everything in our lives with fresh eyes. In some ways it was like being reborn in a world we had not noticed while it passed us. In my long life I had only once loved another, but once discovered my father had him murdered. I never spoke with him again. My uncle offered me an apprenticeship. He was first surgeon at the Ludus Magnus in Pergamum. 5 years later the legions came recruiting skilled surgeons, and I went with them. I truly loved Marcus, and I felt he genuinely loved me, despite the fact that I was old enough to be his father. We were one with each other, as if we'd been lovers in another lifetime. Almost as if we were predestined soulmates who waited for this lifetime so we could be together, despite the dangers we face living and fighting on the frontier. It's an impossible feeling to describe, and I wondered if the revelations of those who drank Kykeon and partook of the Eleusinian greater mysteries enjoyed similar loving relations. We were ambling down the Via Principalis when Marcus's attention became distracted as he intently watched 2 black rats while they scurried from the granaries. "Are those Germani rats or ours?" he questioned. "Can you tell the difference?" I asked, surprised, as he grabbed one rat and held it aloft by the tail, just as the changing of the guard for the rampart began emerging from their barracks opposite us. They ranked formation, and then they slowly marched past us. As Marcus sagely said, Germani rats have bigger penises than our Roman rats. And I was surprised and wondered how he knew about the anatomical differences between rats of differing origins, while he dangled the poor rat and inspected its testicles and penis. "No, that's not one of our rats from Ostia or Rome. It's a Germani rat, see?" he said, pointing to its larger penis as the rat struggled while he held it up by the tail, and the rampart guards marching past us stared at us in wonder. Then I overheard one man who was marching whisper to another, "With Caesar gone, aren't those the men now in command and control of the Castra?" While the man he asked simply rolled his eyes and didn't answer. To my surprise, Marcus didn't kill the rat, but gently set him on the ground and released him, and he fearfully skittered away. "You didn't want to kill him?" I asked. "Nah, he's just trying to get by. Like us," he said, and I smiled. "Today I am divine. I am the hand of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, at least in the eyes of one Germani rat," Marcus said, and grinned with his sunshine smile, and we both laughed and laughed as if he'd said the funniest of things. Imagine Marcus being divine. We must have looked like madmen, standing on the Via Principalis examining rat penises and laughing until we had tears in our eyes. "All is well here," Marcus said emphatically with satisfaction as we returned to our quarters in the Valetudinaria, and for the first time in many, many years, I felt at peace as we entered. As medicus legionis, I could handle the never-ending wounded and the too many nearly dead and too young dying, but it was the chronic pain of living that often plagued my nights, until I met Marcus. When next I saw her, I would have to thank Caesar's witch and ask her where she harvested her Woodland Magick. According to Aleister Crowley, an adept who lived 2,000 years later, magic, with a K, is anything that moves a person closer to fulfilling their ultimate destiny.